In November 2008, the Jersey Chief Police, Graham Power, disputed the findings of investigators and desperately announced that there was absolutely no evidence that anyone was ever murdered at Haut de la Garenne. He wouldn't discuss allegations of child abuse. The British media ignored the evidence and victims and loudly proclaimed that nothing really happened at Haut de la Garenne. Organized abuse of children in state care is all too common and often associated with satanic ritual abuse and mind control programs. While not all pedophiles or child abusers are Satan worshippers, when such abuse is institutionalized and protected, such as it was in Jersey, it is usually part of a larger organized program, and the people who willingly engage in institutional abuse of children can only be described as evil. Jersey is a British island close to France. British and French culture, and many others, have a long history of institutional abuse of children, and the abuse continues today. People in positions of power either engage in the abuse and support it, and are usually able to protect the guilty parties. Anyone who doubts the notion that Jersey is an island run by Satanists only needs to drive around the island and see the statues in the front yards and gardens, which are blatantly satanic. One garden has a 12-foot-high statue of Satan only a mile from Haut de la Garenne, in the front yard of a prominent citizen there, where pedophile statues photographed depicting sex acts between adults and very young children. It would be illegal to publish photos of the statue here, yet in Jersey, having pedophile statues in one's front yard is perfectly acceptable. Jersey also has no sex offender registry and almost never prosecutes those distributing child pornography or molesting children. The facts clearly demonstrate that the Jersey government and ruling class actively support pedophilia. Jersey is a crown island and technically owned by the Queen of England. When a BBC television program covered the investigation at Haut de la Garenne and attempted to interview Frank Walker, the Jersey Chief Minister, the Queen's appointed governing council of the BBC was forced by the Queen to publicly issue an apology. The fact that the BBC was forced to publicly apologize for merely good journalism connects this case all the way to the Queen. Similar cases of organized abuse can help shed light on the Jersey case cover-up. In the London borough of Islington, all of Islington's 12 children's homes were run by pedophiles from the 70s up until the early 1990s and protected by the London government and Britain's national government. Victims vigorously pursued justice and appealed to all levels of government for help, but were blocked at every turn. While government authorities continually refused to investigate despite undeniable evidence, the Evening Standard newspaper did investigate and found that many of the children's homes managers were part of an international ring that supplied children for abuse and pornography. The abuse in Islington was connected to the abuse ring in Jersey and other locations, and children were exchanged between facilities. Police in the UK and Jersey were given full details but would not investigate. One of the people instrumental in the cover-up was Margaret Hodge. She started her political career in 1973 as an Islington councillor and was council leader from 1982 through 1992. During her reign, the children's homes were engaging in wholesale abuse of children, and she did all she could to protect the operations. Not all Islington Council employees were involved in the abuse of children. Social workers Liz Davies and David Coffey resigned their jobs so they could report the abuse to authorities and demand that Scotland Yard investigate. Other Islington social workers wanted to testify but were afraid for their jobs. The exposure of the pedophile ring resulted in the conviction of only Roy Carter, who spent 7.5 years in prison for sexually abusing 7 boys and 2 girls. Scotland Yard refused to investigate further despite overwhelming evidence and persistent pleas by the former social workers and victims. It wasn't until the Evening Standard started covering the story that the public outcry forced Margaret Hodge to resign her position as council leader. But it wasn't long before she was back in a position to support the abuse of children on an even greater scale. In 2003, fully aware of Hodge's avid support of child abuse, British Prime Minister Tony Blair made Margaret Hodge his first Minister for Children in 2003. The position was created just for Hodge. Such a blatantly defiant act by Tony Blair shows unconditional support for pedophiles at the highest levels of British government and the ruling class. Hodge was further rewarded on the 27th of June 2007 when she was appointed Minister of State at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport by the new Prime Minister Gordon Brown. Hodge is Jewish and married to a politician, Sir Henry Hodge, who was made a High Court judge in 2004. The Sea Cadets is a paramilitary program intended to teach children seamanship skills and prepare them to work in the Navy. For most of their history, the Sea Cadets was also a program that specialized in the sexual abuse of children. In Jersey, there were eventually convictions of some employees in the Sea Cadets program for sexually abusing children in 2006. The commanding officer of the Jersey Sea Cadets was arrested for downloading child pornography and including photos of the Sea Cadets. Some of the men convicted were closely connected with the Haute de la Garenne. In 2006, the Canadian Department of National Defence, D&D, settled a class action lawsuit for the sexual abuse of more than 200 children from 1964 to 1980. The abuse occurred on the HMCS Discovery, stationed on Deadman's Island in Vancouver, British Columbia. Cases in other Commonwealth countries have not been as successful. Despite overwhelming evidence, in the UK, the Sea Cadets has been an institution of abuse for thousands of children, and the government continues to protect the abusers to this day. One example is Lieutenant Commander Alan Waters, who worked with the Sea Cadet Corps in Britain for more than 30 years and was widely known as a pedophile. Waters was officially caught in a compromising act with a young cadet while he was commanding the Clapton unit of the Sea Cadets in London in the early 1980s, yet was merely reassigned to another unit and promoted up the ranks of the organization. As a reward for his continued sexual abuse of children, Waters was appointed superintendent of the Sea Cadet Training Center in Portsmouth in 1996 and was put on the Sea Cadets Governing Council. After retiring from Sea Cadets, Waters moved to India and set up an orphanage with fellow British naval pedophile Duncan Grant so they would have ready access to young children to abuse. In 2006, Waters and Duncan were finally jailed for child sex abuse in India, yet the corrupt Bombay High Court acquitted both of them on appeal. As of August 2008, Waters remained free but unable to leave India until he comes up with more payoff money. Despite the case in India, the British government has refused to investigate the charges against Waters by his many British victims. The Islington and Sea Cadets cases clearly show that extreme abuse of children is supported at virtually every level of government in Britain, and that Britain's leaders continue to go to great lengths to protect and reward those abusing children. The same is true in many other countries. One of the most important and well-documented cases of government-supported satanic abuse of children is a case commonly known as the Franklin cover-up. It is important because it was so carefully and professionally investigated, and the ensuing cover-up was so blatant and well-documented.
In light of the recent Penn State scandal, I couldn't help but be reminded of the Franklin cover-up case involving the sexual abuse of children at Boys Town in the 1980s and the 1990s. Boys Town, the distinguished Catholic orphanage on the outskirts of Omaha, Nebraska, was established in 1917 by Father Edward Flanagan. Its altruistic purpose was to offer help, hope, and healing to abused, abandoned, and neglected children. What really happened at Boys Town leaves us all in shock. A Republican operative named Larry King was involved with procuring boys and girls from Boys Town in Nebraska and elsewhere and entrapping them in a child sex slave and espionage ring. King, with an annual salary of under $20,000 a year, was throwing sex parties for the powerful all the way up to the White House, and a $5,000 a month condo in Washington, D.C., and apparently taping the proceedings for blackmail purposes. The allegations brought up were horrific tortures and sexual abuse of children. Many powerful political people, including Barney Frank, were brought up before the Supreme Court as being involved in pedophile rings. The Boys Town case became known as the Franklin cover-up. The Second Mile, founded in 1977 in State College, Pennsylvania, is a statewide nonprofit organization for children who need additional support and who would benefit from positive human contact. Second Mile was founded by Jerry Sandusky, former Penn State football coach. As you know, the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office recently announced 40 counts against the former coach, saying he used his position as the head of the prominent children's charity to lure boys and to molest them. For more than a decade, former Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky abused boys in Penn State's football facilities, and university officials lied to cover it up. The grand jury report included the horrifying details of what a graduate assistant saw and heard. As the graduate assistant entered the locker room doors, he was surprised to find the lights in the showers on. He then heard rhythmic slapping sounds, and he believed the sounds to be those of sexual activity. As the graduate assistant put his sneakers in his locker, he looked in the shower. He saw a naked boy whose age he estimated to be 10 years old, with his hands up against the wall, being subjected to anal intercourse by a naked Sandusky. Other allegations include forced oral sex, showers with inappropriate contact, and more, on boys ranging from under 10 years old to 13 years of age. Keep in mind that these boys came from his charitable children's organization. In both Boys Town and Penn State cases, it is obvious to see the similarities that those who portray themselves as a children's charity have used their positions to violate susceptible youth who have little means of defending themselves. It is also notable that in both cases there are major cover-ups. For example, Boys Town, the evening of July 11, 1990, Gary Caradori, the lead investigator of the Franklin cover-up Boys Town case, had the smoking gun evidence on the case. Caradori would fly that night from Chicago on his private plane with his son en route to Lincoln, Nebraska with the evidence. The plane exploded in mid-air a short time later while flying over Aurora, Illinois, killing Caradori and his 8-year-old son. A deputy sheriff of a local Illinois Sheriff Department was the first person on the scene of the plane explosion. The deputy sheriff said that there was child pornography all over the farm field. The FBI immediately arrived with 3 flatbed trucks, grabbed the evidence from his hands, picked up every piece of evidence, the plane and its parts, and put it on the flatbed trucks, and told the peace officer, "This is confidential information and don't ever speak of it again." The evidence has never surfaced again in the Franklin investigation or in any other investigation. In the Sandusky Penn State scandal, when an investigation first started in 2005 over allegations that Jerry Sandusky was engaging in sexual acts with young boys, District Attorney Ray Grikar was working on getting to the bottom of things. Disregarding Sandusky's position at Penn State and in the community, and unfortunately in April of that same year, Grikar went missing. Grikar's disappearance has been a mystery ever since. His car was found in a parking lot 50 miles from his home with his laptop, wallet, and keys missing. Investigators later revealed an internet search on Grikar's home computer that read, "How to wreck a hard drive." Foul play is still suspected because the former district attorney's body still has never been found. Former FBI Director Louis Frey, now in the private sector, has been hired to uncover the truth about the horrific child sex abuse crimes in Pennsylvania. Frey served as FBI director during the Clinton administration and was in that leadership spot during the 1995 Alfred P. Murrah building bombing. He was also involved in Waco and Ruby Ridge. Is he there to uncover the truth or to cover it up?